Nyck is the wasted talent of motorsport. After his Formula 1 debut at the Italian Grand Prix recently, we can all tell that he's a pretty decent driver. Now obviously Goat Tiffy is probably Nyck's closest rival for that Williams seat next year, although Jos Capito has said that they see no reason to change driver lineups, and that Latifi can still prove himself this season. I think I saw Tomo say this on Twitter, he said like Nyck's seat or something crazy, but it's true, it's gonna happen. And I think it's pretty safe to say that he passed with flying colours. There are probably about 3 main contenders for that seat other than Latifi. They're Nyck de Vries, who's obviously just driven for them, Logan Sargent, the Williams junior driver in F2, and then probably Daniel Ricciardo as well. But I don't think Daniel's going there because he's had a pretty bad last 4 years. And after this race, I think Nyck de Vries is the top of the pecking order. Unless somehow Latifi wins the Drivers' World Championship by the end of it, I don't know, maybe he will, hopefully he does. But let's learn a little bit more about Nyck de Vries. Firstly, the thing that might shock you the most is that he's not actually part of the Lando, George and Alex generation of drivers that a lot of people think he is. Okay, he's only 1 year older than Alex Albon, but he's still 27, and that's only 3 years younger than Stoffel Van Dorn, who I seem to think is like pretty old. So what about his career so far? Well, let's talk about Formula 2, which is probably the most important. He was in that junior formula for about 4 years. He joined 2017, the same year that Charles Leclerc won the championship. And then in the following year, his teammate was George Russell. And that was pretty tough because George completely dominated in that season. Obviously, he won the championship, followed by Lando and Alex. But de Vries didn't do too bad. He came P4 behind those guys. And obviously, those 3 moved up to Formula 1 with Alex to Toro Rosso, and then eventually Red Bull, Lando to McLaren, and of course, George to Williams. And a little fun fact about Nyck and McLaren. Nyck de Vries was actually a McLaren junior driver way back. But when Zach Brown took over as the head of racing at McLaren, he actually swapped Nyck for Lando. And in hindsight, it's probably a good thing because Nyck is so much older than Lando, so probably better investment. And by the looks of things, it looks like Lando's better than him. But maybe he'll go to McLaren. Who knows? Maybe Oscar Piastri's going to get sacked. Then in the following year, in 2019, Nyck de Vries won the Formula 2 title, beating out Latifi, who finished in P2. I know, shocker, what? It didn't go anywhere special for 2020. At this stage, he became pretty close with Toto Wolff and the Mercedes outfit. He then joined the Mercedes EQ team in Formula E. I know Formula E gets quite a bit of hate, but he did pretty well there. Nyck won the 2020/2021 Formula E World Championship. And at the newly formed team, he was also partnering Stoffel Van Dorn, another ex-McLaren driver. Now this season they both did pretty well, with Nyck getting a few wins and podiums, and of course Stoffel Van Dorn winning the championship. And while he wasn't at Formula E races, you'd probably see him standing next to Toto Wolff on Grand Prix weekend. Then Toto put him in loads of FP1 sessions with different teams, them being Williams, Aston Martin, of course Mercedes. And it was at the Italian Grand Prix weekend where he was with Aston Martin in FP1, and then got called up to Williams for quali and FP3 and the race and so on. And of course he scored points in his debut, and it only took Nyck 1 race to score points in the Williams, whereas it took like George Russell like 48 and Latifi 28 and stuff like that. So he's doing pretty well. But this is why it's great for Williams. They have Alex Albon and Nyck de Vries, 2 drivers that have shown they can score points in that car, whereas Latifi's been struggling as a backmarker of the entire season, his entire career pretty much. And he's really been dragging the team down a bit, so if they had 2 drivers like Alex Albon, or arguably better than Alex with what he's done today, then that is great for Williams. And maybe be able to move up to the midfield where they really want to be and really should be. And then the second aspect. This is so good for Mercedes. Obviously, I imagine he'll keep those Toto Wolff Mercedes ties as he moves to Williams. When Lewis Hamilton eventually retires, and he will because he's like 37, 38 now, second oldest driver on the grid, and he's only going to be in it for a couple more years, I imagine, because he is starting to fall off. We can all see it. Maybe his time's up. So I'm sure there's loads of drivers who would love to be in that Mercedes seat, but I'm sure Mercedes would love to have one of their drivers in F1 already. Like George Russell staying in Williams for a few years and waiting for Bottas and waiting for him to grow up a bit and develop as a driver. Same thing can happen to Nyck. Now, obviously, he's not as young as George. He's probably going to be like 30 when he eventually comes out of Williams. Bottas was a similar age, so I think this could really work for Mercedes. But what do you think? What do you think about Nyck de Vries' debut? Do you think he'll be any good if he joins Formula 1 next year? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out this one right here about Ferrari messing up and Mattia Binotto. We need to get rid of him. He's horrible, trust me. Just bin him off, please. I hate him.